His attitude, personality, and character shone through every lyric. He didn't just sing those songs, he was those songs.
Toby Keith's sudden passing left a massive void in country music, but the real mystery began when his family completely vanished from the public eye. Now, after months of silence, his wife, Tricia Lucus, has stepped into the spotlight to drop a bombshell about her husband's hidden choices and his ultimate final fear. What exactly was the country icon desperately trying to hide from the world? To truly understand the shocking depth of her confession, we must first look at what was happening behind closed doors when the world went dark. Inside Tricia's months of mourning. When Toby Keith passed away on February 5, 2024, after his long battle with stomach cancer, a heavy silence fell over his Oklahoma ranch. Almost overnight, his wife, Tricia Lucus, remained silent and completely vanished from the public eye. It felt as though she turned off her phone, shut out the news media, and pulled down a strict wall of privacy to process a personal loss that felt far too massive to share with the world right away. But outside their gates, a massive wave of global grief was exploding. Millions of fans, fellow musicians, and political figures flooded social media with tributes to the country icon. Radio stations played his anthems on repeat, and the entire country music community wept together. For Trisha, seeing this global outpouring of love brought a great sense of comfort. Yet, the situation was also completely paralyzing. The noisy celebration of his public life stood in sharp contrast to the quiet reality inside her house, where Toby's booming voice and massive physical presence were suddenly gone. Instead of capitalizing on the sudden media attention or accepting invitations to high-profile television specials, Trisha intentionally chose to step completely away from the spotlight. She politely declined major interview requests and stayed far away from the early music industry gatherings that rushed to honor her husband. She desperately needed space to navigate her deep grief within a very tight circle of family members and close lifelong friends who knew the real man behind the legendary celebrity persona. This extended period of isolation allowed the family to face a heartbreaking contrast every single day. The world knew Toby as a larger-than-life, ultra-confident patriot who ruled massive stadium stages with a booming baritone. Inside his private home, however, Trisha was dealing with the empty spaces left behind by a gentle husband and protective father. She spent those quiet months coming to terms with the full reality of the grueling, multi-year cancer battle Toby had fought tenaciously behind closed doors. He had worked tirelessly to shield his loyal fans from the absolute worst of his physical suffering until his very last breath. However, this wall of absolute privacy could not last forever. When an invitation arrived from country music's most prestigious institution, Trisha knew it was time to step into the light, and the words she chose would stun everyone in attendance. The Hall of Fame ceremony, breaking the silence in Nashville. October 20th, 2024 was a historic evening that the country music community will remember for a very long time. Nashville was hosting the annual Country Music Hall of Fame medallion ceremony inside the iconic CMA Theater. The room was packed with a star-studded audience of legends, peers, and industry executives who had all gathered to honor the latest class of icons. When Tricia Lucus finally stepped out from the wings, the entire room fell completely silent. It was her very first public appearance since losing Toby, and as she slowly walked up to the brightly lit podium, the weight of the moment was heavy in the air. Also, Trisha was not standing up there alone. Her son, Toby Keith, walked up with her, standing closely by her side to provide a steady shoulder of support under the stage lights. As she looked out at the sea of familiar faces, Trisha was visibly trembling with raw emotion. She did not try to hide her vulnerability from the crowd. Instead, she opened her speech with an incredibly candid admission that brought a wave of empathy through the theater. She told everyone that they had probably guessed how emotional this night was for her, explaining that it was actually her first time being able to speak publicly, and she honestly was not sure if she could finish what she wanted to say. Her vulnerability only made her words more powerful as she began to share the deep heartbreak surrounding this honor. Trisha explained that being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame was the ultimate pinnacle for Toby, an achievement he had eagerly anticipated and deeply valued throughout his long career. It was a bittersweet reality because he had missed this official celebration by mere months. He had actually been chosen for the honor right before his passing, meaning he never got to hear the official public announcement. Even in the middle of such a heavy moment, Tricia managed to bring a warm, bittersweet smile to everyone in the room by sharing a glimpse of Toby's signature humor. She told the audience that even though he did not live to see the medallion placed around his neck, she knew exactly how he would have reacted. With his trademark confidence and sharp wit, Toby would have looked at the honor and jokingly told everyone that he should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. While receiving the medallion was a monumental milestone, the true depth of Tricia's speech emerged when she began dismantling the public myths around Toby, exposing the true heart of the man behind the music, the artistry behind the brash persona. You see, to a casual fan, Toby Keith was the ultimate larger-than-life country superstar, famously known for rowdy party anthems like Red Solo Cup and fiercely outspoken political debates. Tricia, however, wanted the world to understand his true core identity. She firmly emphasized to the Nashville crowd that beneath the loud public persona, Toby viewed himself first, foremost, and exclusively as a songwriter. Music was his true passion, and everything else he achieved was built on top of his natural gift for clever storytelling. This identity came with a diligent work ethic that defined their entire marriage. Tricia described his relentless creative drive, sharing how Toby would completely lock himself away once a new song idea took hold of his mind. He possessed a rare focus, working tirelessly for hours until the lyrics and the melody perfectly matched the exact vision in his head. Yet, despite this intense artistic devotion, he never allowed his career to overshadow his home life. Tricia made a special point to honor his balance of both worlds during her speech, warmly stating that he was a wonderful husband, father, a son, grandfather, who always kept his family protected and grounded. Because of this deep dedication to his craft, Toby wrote songs that resonated across the globe. Tricia told the audience that his music stood the test of time because his rich baritone voice delivered words he genuinely lived, imbuing every single line with undeniable authenticity. He sang the songs of people's lives, giving them a unique voice. This real-life experience gave Toby a rare gift of instant connection. He could sit down with complete strangers and naturally make them feel like his lifelong best friends within a single conversation. This human quality translated directly into his massive worldwide arena tours, where thousands of fans felt a personal bond with the man under the spotlight. Tricia also highlighted how Toby completely defied standard music industry brands. In a world where artists rely on massive marketing teams to carefully construct a relatable image, Toby never needed any help from executives. His genuine, completely unfiltered nature was his brand, and he remained entirely indifferent to corporate industry pushback or outside criticism throughout his entire career. This fierce authenticity and refusal to compromise did not stop inside the recording studio, because it also drove him to take terrifying, secret risks in war zones that he intentionally hid from his own family. The Secret Patriot, what Toby hid from his family on USO tours. Long before the public fully understood the depth of his true devotion, Toby Keith traveled to the most dangerous regions on Earth under a strict self-imposed code of secrecy. While the American public saw a superstar performing in packed entertainment arenas across the United States, he was quietly executing a massive, multi-year military commitment. Toby completed 18 extensive USO tours throughout his career, routinely placing himself directly on the front lines of the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. He completely refused to play comfortable shows at safe rearguard installations, explicitly demanding to travel to remote locations where the troops rarely saw any outside entertainment. This high-stakes environment required an absolute veil of silence at home, creating a hidden reality that Tricia only fully unpacked much later. Because of strict military safety protocols and a deep personal desire to shield his family from constant panic, Toby deliberately hid the true dangers of his travel itineraries. While his wife and children believed he was safely singing at large, secure military distribution hubs, Toby was actually flying into remote forward operating bases on heavily armored transport planes. He knew that revealing the constant threat of mortar attacks and active combat hazards would cause immense emotional distress for Tricia back on their quiet Oklahoma ranch. To ensure his family remained completely protected from this day-to-day anxiety, Toby established an unyielding rule for all of his overseas communications. He completely refused to discuss the hazardous conditions, the sudden incoming rocket fire, or his specific geographic coordinates while he was actively deployed. Tricia only learned about the terrifying close calls and the harsh realities of his missions after his boots safely touched back down on American soil. Only when the immediate danger had completely passed would he call his wife to confess exactly where he had been and what risks he had survived during his grueling week on the front lines. This level of personal sacrifice highlighted a motivation that Tricia strongly emphasized was completely detached from commercial gain or political talking points. Toby did not complete hundreds of these frontline shows to sell records, gain favors, or boost his celebrity brand. For him, the commitment was a quiet, deeply moral obligation to sit with wounded soldiers in field hospitals and lift the spirits of those carrying the heaviest burdens. Toby's deep instinct to protect the people he loved was the bedrock of his character, a trait forged decades earlier during a humble Oklahoma love story that began long before his fame and fortune. Let's take a look at how Tricia and Toby Keith met. The love story built before the millions. To see the absolute origin of this protective drive, we have to travel all the way back to 1981, long before the multi-million-dollar record deals and sold-out stadiums. At the time, Toby was a 20-year-old giant working the grueling, dirty shifts of the Oklahoma oil fields. He was bringing home a decent living of about $50,000 a year, pulling heavy steel pipes by day and playing rough local bars by night with his band. It was during one of those smoky club gigs that he caught the eye of 19-year-old Tricia Lucus. Tricia was a young single mother trying to build a stable life for her infant daughter. While other guys her age were running wild, Toby showed an incredible amount of maturity and focus that instantly set him apart from the crowd. Immediately, their connection clicked, leading them to get married in March of 1984. However, the timing could not have been more challenging for the young couple. Right around their wedding day, the domestic oil market completely collapsed, wiping out Toby's steady oil field income overnight. The newlyweds suddenly found themselves living paycheck to paycheck inside a cramped trailer. Bill collectors were constantly knocking on their door, and local skeptics openly mocked Toby's ambitious musical dreams. Many people pulled Tricia aside, advising her to force her husband to give up on music and find a real job. Instead of listening to the doubts, Tricia chose to believe in his talent. She took complete control of their tight family finances, balancing every single penny while keeping his spirits high during the bleakest moments. Perhaps Toby reciprocated this steady faith by immediately adopting Tricia's daughter, Shelley, raising her as his very own with absolute devotion. The young family soon grew to include their daughter, Crystal, and their son, Steelin. Even as Toby's music career finally exploded into mainstream country stardom during the 90s, he made a conscious choice to anchor himself to his Oklahoma roots. He routinely structured his intense touring schedules to ensure he never missed crucial family milestones, prioritizing his role as a father above the heavy demands of the entertainment industry. Looking back at their 43 total years together, Tricia remains incredibly proud of the beautiful life they built from absolutely nothing. She emphasizes that Toby lived life on a massive scale, loved his family with a fierce intensity, and had zero regrets. Yet, living with no regrets meant facing his toughest battle with the same unyielding defiance, leading to a final masterpiece that Tricia watches with a completely different perspective today. The real story of his final days. You know, one can say that the transformation of a casual golf course conversation into a prophetic final anthem is perhaps the most remarkable chapter of Toby's musical life. Well, back in 2018, Toby was playing a round of golf with Hollywood legend Clint Eastwood, who mentioned he was about to celebrate his 88th birthday. When Toby asked how he kept going so strong, Eastwood replied that he did not let the old man in. Inspired by those words, Toby went home and wrote a haunting masterpiece for Eastwood's film, the mule. At the time, it was a brilliant creative exercise about aging. Nobody could have predicted that when Toby was diagnosed with advanced stomach cancer in the late 2021, those exact lyrics would transform into his own literal battle cry. That battle cry reached its peak in September of 2023 at the People's Choice Country Awards inside the historic Grand Ole Opry House. Tricia watched from the wings as her husband prepared for what would become his final televised appearance. Toby walked onto the stage looking frail, having lost a noticeable amount of weight from his grueling medical treatments. Yet, the moment the music started, his incredible willpower took over. He stood tall before the microphone, delivering a performance so raw and powerful that it shook the entire venue. That night, there was not a dry eye in the house. Tricia saw hardened music executives and longtime fans weeping openly as Toby sang those deeply prophetic words. This unforgettable moment served as a beautiful public goodbye that perfectly captured his lifelong refusal to surrender to illness. Behind the scenes, however, the physical cost of that performance was staggering. Tricia witnessed an agonizing reality that the television cameras never captured. It required hours of intense pain management, profound exhaustion, and days of slow physical recovery for Toby to gather enough strength to step onto that stage. He endured that immense suffering because he refused to let his illness rob him of his final gift to his loyal fans. Today, Tricia looks back at that moment with a profound sense of pride. She does not view that final song as a tragedy. Instead, she sees it as Toby's ultimate triumph over his terminal diagnosis, a definitive statement proving that he controlled his own destiny and his own legacy until his very last breath. With his final song cemented in history, Toby's physical journey came to an end, leaving Tricia and her children with a massive, daunting promise that they are actively fulfilling today. Carrying the torch, Tricia's promise to keep the legacy alive. While Toby spent his entire career conquering the country music industry, his final months on Earth were actually consumed by a completely different kind of worry. Tricia candidly shared that his biggest underlying fear as his health declined was not about his massive catalog of hit music or his financial wealth. Instead, he was deeply terrified that his beloved charity would lose its vital momentum and eventually fail once he was no longer around to champion it. Toby Keith always considered his charity work to be his single greatest achievement. Specifically, he poured his heart into the OK Kids Chorale, a cost-free, state-of-the-art haven in Oklahoma, designed entirely for pediatric cancer patients and their families. He often described this special facility as the absolute best gift he ever gave to the world. It provides a warm, hopeful sanctuary where families can stay together without any financial burden while their young children undergo grueling medical treatments. To ease Toby's mind before he passed away, Tricia and their 3 children promised to step directly into his shoes, vowing to keep the foundation running smoothly for generations to come. Soon enough, the family proved their commitment by achieving incredible new milestones. Tricia recently teamed up with legendary rock icon Sammy Hagar to host the 21st annual Toby Keith and Friends Golf Classic. This star-studded charity event was a massive success, bringing in a record-setting $1.4 million to support the kids. Tricia concluded her emotional remarks in Nashville by noting that the profound emptiness her family feels is shared by millions of people across the globe. The country music icon had a rare ability to treat every fan with genuine respect, making everyone feel as though they were a close personal friend. Toby Keith may have left the stage, yet through Tricia's strength, his music, his patriotism, and his kindness will echo forever. Tricia Lucus's emotional words definitely remind us all of the incredible man behind the music. What is your favorite Toby Keith song or memory? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel right now. For more content similar to this, click on the next video on your screen. We will see you in the next story.